This is Spectrum.
Alternative medicine, homeopathy, secret society, hypnosis, the paranormal, alternative energy, UFO, abduction, the weird, the wild, and the wonderful.
With your hosts, Tom Theophanous and Scott Jordan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Spectrum Radio Network on BBS Radio 2. This is Scott Jordan here with my co-host, Tom Theophanous, and remember, there's no such thing as too much information. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just a quick heads up about next week's program. We'll be holding a special event. On Tuesday, December 14th, we will be doing two shows instead of our regular single show. The first show will be at 3:55 p.m. Pacific, and it'll run till 5:55 p.m. Pacific, when Bill Ryan will be joining us for a live webinar with BBS radio listeners and Project Avalon forum members. They will be able to ask Bill Ryan questions live in the PA chat. All links will be provided on the website, www.spectrumradionetwork.com, and Bill will answer those questions live on the radio. This is a much-anticipated event by Project Avalon members and should be very exciting. And then at our regular time at 7:55 p.m. Pacific, we will be speaking with Alan Steinfeld, who is a show on BBS Radio previous to ours. Check out the website, www.spectrumradionetwork, for details under upcoming guests. Lloyd, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Almost 2 months ago, on October 9th, a Sumerian scholar passed away. Of course, I'm talking about Zecharia Sitchin. And was his work any inspiration or stepping stone to your research into human origins?
Yes, it was, very much, in fact. He influenced me tremendously. I had been working for about 20 years in about 1990 when I found his work finally. His first book came out in '76, but I didn't find it. There was no internet then, so it just wasn't recommended to me, and I didn't find it until 1990. For those 20 years prior to that, I had been working on my own in the field of hominoids, Bigfoot, the abominable snowman, and all that, and I had come to some very strong and serious conclusions about that. I knew that they were the indigenous, upright, walking primates of planet Earth, and we didn't really belong here. We didn't have a place in the fossil record, but I had no idea that I could believe, that I could accept how we actually got here. And then I read Sitchin's work, and I had my answer, so I knew that I could take his work, that I had the front end of what he had, and he had the back end of what I needed. And by putting the two together, I could make something very unique and original and useful. And so that's what I did, and Everything You Know Is Wrong, and my career took off from there. So I owe him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be sorely missed. He was a brilliant scholar. I've read every book that he put out, and it was 20-something years ago I read that, so it was a real eye-opener. I mean, it was like getting cold water thrown in your face, going, what? Really? Could that be possible? But he lays it out as... the other thing is, I've noticed, is he's so scholarly that the depth of his books are like reading a textbook. And you sort of went away from that a little bit. You went, I mean, you have your textbook qualities, but you also wrote it in a way, and I'm talking about Everything You Know Is Wrong. You wrote it in a way that the common man can just, somebody without a degree in Sumerian can read it and go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well, understand that English was Zechariah's third language. He was born in Russia. He was raised in Palestine, so he started out with Russian and then Yiddish, and then he moved to English. So he didn't quite master it exactly. He wrote very well, but it's kind of a stodgy style that makes it hard for some people to get it. And part of what I wanted to do was make his information at least more accessible. I'd been writing for 20 years, 30 years at the point when I wrote the book almost, and I've been, English is my first language, so I just have some advantages over him there. And I wanted to make his material more accessible. So in part 4 of my book, I just sort of boil his down into that part and give like the cliff notes to the basic fundamentals of his work for those who can't really hack his stuff, which can be tough, especially in his first 3 books. In his later books, it gets easier, and his last book is just beautifully well written. I would imagine that he started getting some real good editorial help toward, for his last books, because they read a lot better than, I don't know if you read his last one, There Were Giants Upon the Earth, but beautifully well done and very easy to read and understand.
Yeah, I mean, I started out with what, I guess a lot of people, the 12th Planet.
And, well, you really should start with the 12th Planet. That's his fundamental text, and really, whenever people contact me wanting to get into that area of study, I always tell them, read the first 3 in order first, and then you can go pretty much anywhere after that. But you really more or less have to read the 12th Planet, Stairway to Heaven, and the Wars of Gods and Men to really get the overall view of what was going on back then, and the rest of it is just spreading out from there.
So, Lloyd, can you give us a kind of a rundown how you got into this from the beginning?
Well, I was a senior in college back in 1968, so it's a long time ago. And I read a book about hominoids, The Abominable Snowman by Ivan Sanderson, and I just got hooked. And so I wanted to know everything I could find out about that subject. And I started digging, and, with no internet and no real great links of communication in that field. I'm from Louisiana. Most of that was going on in the Pacific Northwest. It was very difficult. So I just did it, kind of catch as catch can, as I was living my life and gathering it. And over time, like I said, it was a very slow process, 20 years, working on it, making a living. Then found Sitchin's book, and I knew that I could make something good and original and useful. So that's what I did. I focused on that, did my first nonfiction book, Everything You Know Is Wrong, and, just my life just took a completely different turn after that.
You had already done some writing previous to that.
Yeah, I'd written fiction for quite some time. I'd written a couple novels that were published. I had been in Hollywood for most of the 80s, working as a screenwriter, television writer, so I'd been writing for quite a while, and never to very much success. But I just thought fiction was where it was for me. But when I finally turned my hand to nonfiction, which I'd kind of disdained up to that point, I found out that I was really very skilled at it, and that's where my abilities were all the time, and I just didn't realize it.
So you started out talking about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Abominable Snowman, Yeti, the Almas, and the Agogways. I just gave 4 types of hominids, but I know you know a lot more detail. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, you can lead into
Well,
that.
they're basically, most people feel like that there's just Bigfoot or the Abominable Snowman or Sasquatch. They hear these names and they think it's all the same creature, which is not true. There are 4 different physical types that live on all continents except Antarctica. They're very common out there. The Earth is their planet, basically. They have lived here for millions of years, literally, back well deep into the Miocene, at least 20 million years ago, with Morotopithecus, one of the Miocene apes, walking upright. So it's clear in the fossil record that we have these upright walking apes that science just tends to ignore and refuses to deal with the fact that we have the evidence, because that evidence is something they just don't want to cope with. They don't want to have to try to explain, so they just ignore it, but it's there. So you have these 4 different types: the giant kind, which are indeed the Bigfoot; Sasquatch kind, which are 8 or 9 feet tall; then you have the Yeti, Abominable Snowman type, and they're about man-size, 5 to 7 feet tall. You have a different kind of man-size one, the Almas and Kaptars, and then you have the pygmy kind, which are the Sadapas and the Agogways, and the Hobbit of Indonesia is of that type, and they're about 3 to 4 feet tall, the pygmy kind. So that's it. They are distinct, unique, living in different environments around the world. Most people think it's silly to imagine that because, they think humans live everywhere, that we cover all of the earth, when in fact we live predominantly in about 50%, literally 50% only, of the arable land. Take away the ice caps, take away the deserts, and what you have left are extremely dense montane forests in much of the world. You have very deep and dense jungles in much of the world, and in those areas we may skirt the edges, we may carve roads through, but we don't really live there. It's just too hard for us physically to live in these places where they live. And so we've just sort of divvied up the world. We took the good places, the clear places, and they take the woods, the forests, and the jungles for themselves.
Yeah, the coast. We like the coastline. We're big on that. There was an older study that used to say that there was 40% wild wilderness, and then a newer study came out and said no, it's 50%. It's 50%.
Actually, it used to be over 50%. We're denuding the Amazon at such a fantastic clip that it actually might be under 50% by now.
Okay.
But not by much. But nonetheless, we are stripping areas of the earth of their vegetative cover, particularly forests in the Amazon, and some areas in Siberia that are being cut down for mining and for pulpwood and things like that. So it does happen, but in just about every country there are deep, dense forests. And like in the United States, don't just think about the Pacific Northwest. We have reports, good, valid sighting reports of hominoids in every single state except Hawaii. And it's not impossible that Hawaii has them, but there are parts of Hawaii where just nobody goes, and they could be out there for all anybody knows. So it's just they're there. They are absolutely all over the place, and they are seen on a regular basis. Get a good 150 reports or more each year, good sighting reports. There's no idea to know how many people see them and don't report them because they know that science and everybody else is going to make fun of them because this is a subject that has been forbidden for major mainstream scientists to get involved in. There's UFOs, aliens, hominoids, and cold fusion. That's just off limits. Science can't fool with that. And so,
it used to be pandas. Off limits, yeah.
Well, no, the pandas were. That's back in the 1800s. The panda was the hominoid of the 1800s. People are just totally unaware of this now, but in the 1800s there were these legends coming out of China of a black and white bear that lived in bamboo forests and seemed to be vegetarian, and every expert in the world knew there could be no such thing as a vegetarian bear, and certainly not two-toned the way the pandas were described. So no scientists bothered to go look for them because the people in China who were living with them had to be morons. So that's how it stood for quite a long time. And then a naturalist happened to be in Sichuan province and saw the hide of one and realized that they were real and was able to pay some people to get one, a live one, that he tried to bring back to Paris, and it died, but he got it skinned and stuffed, and so they knew they were real. So over the next 60 years, museums and universities would send teams into Sichuan province, which is not that big, maybe the size of Arizona in China, but very, very rugged terrain, and these teams of just crack hunters trying to get the next panda. 60 years, mind you. Not constant effort, but a lot of effort, a heck of a lot of effort.
30 years, and then they gave up for a while, didn't they?
Yeah, they gave up after 30 years, and then it was just, people would go hunting intermittently there, but not really thinking they were going to find a panda. And then Teddy Roosevelt's sons finally got the next one again by accident. They shot it out of a tree, and then after that it was another long stretch before they got another one and another one.